Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're doing a banner review of the brand new Overlord characters. Of course, we have Demi-Yoga here and Gamma as well. Both of them are actually not too bad, and I believe the developers actually put quite a bit of time into them. On JPI I've pulled both of them, very luckily. We're going to basically be going over what they do, so on and so forth, and then of course then we'll go over the banner, and then my thoughts on them, and then I also want to go over, I would say, probably the pros and cons of each, really, because they are quite good, but there is a few cons to them, which I think was sort of part of their design, really, to make them, to give them their uses, really. So we'll go with Demi-Yoga. So Demi-Yoga, his single target skill is, I have to load it up on Discord because I have no idea what that actually says. I do not speak Japanese. Demi-Yoga, where is he? Single target, where are you? There it is. So it is 2 times crit chance, and then for every of his debuff, which is called Flare Prison. Flare Prison's flame applies to the enemy. It increases the damage dealt by 80%. Holy damn, that's a lot of damage. Especially bear in mind, turn 1 you can apply 2 every turn if you have his relic. That's a lot of damage. That's 160% damage dealt, basically guaranteed. With an okay multiplier skill. I understand why it's not stupidly high. The only problem with it, once again, because it is solely based on having multiple debuffs on an enemy, characters like Nofmi, who can only have 1 debuff, and who are blue, are going to tank very well against this guy. His other skill is Weak Point, basically 3 times damage to debuffed enemies, and then increased damage by 50% when attacking an enemy with the Mind Control debuff. The Mind Control debuff is part of his passive, we'll get into that in a second. I got his ultimate, which is 1/6, applies 1 stack of Flare Prison's Flame and inflicts 350% of sever damage, that's always going to guarantee crit, to the enemies. And if you have him 2/6, he will also ignore, he'll apply another debuff, which will basically ignore 30% crit defense and crit resistance. Sorry, just crit defense and resistance by 30%. Which is cool, it means you're about to hit much harder. But it's, once again, it's 2/6, and it's not the biggest improvement ever. Once again, it's 6/6. Well, actually, at 2/6 he does get extra flame, which I guess is kind of handy for his relic. And then, of course, at max stacks, he gets 4 of his own ignites that apply. These ignites are different to the normal ignites; they're not the same. And I'll go on to his passive. Let's actually just load him up into the training thing. Why not? Okay, that's the Mind Control debuff. So, at the start of the battle, applies Mind Control to enemies with the highest attack stat. The enemy with the attack stat lower than the unit. And the enemy that has the attack stat lower than the unit. So basically, the highest attack character and anyone who's got lower attack than Demi-Yoga. So you really want him with attack crit. So he gives himself the additional race of Demon to himself, and for every Demon ally participating in a battle, he increases allies, demons' basic stats by 5% and decreases the damage they take by 10% per demon. So a full demon team, 15% basic stat boost, and 30% damage reduction, which is insane. If you mix that with Gelder's own passive, Gelder can actually reach the damage cap limit, sorry, the damage reduction limit, which is 80%. And then the other part of his passive, at the start of the ally's turn, applies Flare Prison's Flame to all enemies for 2 turns. And when the unit attacks an enemy with attribute advantage, increase damage dealt by 50%. Once again, I think the reason they've done that is to counteract the human team. In fact, they tried him against the human team, which is really what he's built to counter, and maybe he wasn't doing as much damage as they would expect, so they gave him what Blue Big Aaron has, which is increased damage dealt by 50% when attacking with attribute advantage, which is kind of cool. You know, human team's full green, he will just wipe them. When the enemies use a debuff, attack card applies a debuff that decreases max HP by 30% for 1 turn. Once again, designed to counteract Chaos Arthur, Nofmi, characters like that. Human team basically is what he's used to counter, which is sort of expected. And what Mind Control does is decrease the damage by 30%, and they cannot target Demi-Yoga when there are when you have other allies alive. They cannot target him, which is cool. We'll have a look at his skills, and then I'll go over his relic at the end as well. We'll let a few stacks build up. These can stack up to 8 times, and what these debuffs are, which are called Flare Prison, increased damage taken by 15%. stacks up to 8 times, which is 120% increased damage taken, which is a lot of increased damage taken. Basically, if the enemy has 8 of these debuffs, they are dead. It doesn't matter who hits them, Gelder can AoE once, you're dying. Because once again, because he's an additional race of demon, you can run Gelder, you can run Demon King melee, there's 3 AoE skills on that team, melee's going to be nuking them. And that doesn't even include his relic, which is... I lost it for a split second. God damn it, I've now lost it. But basically, off the top of my head, it is applies Flare Prism for an extra for another 2 turns. Basically, his passive will apply 1 debuff, his relic will then apply another debuff, which as you can see here, that's the reason why it's 4 now, is because we have the relic. And then for every Flare Prism on the enemy, increase demon allies damage dealt by 5%. Up to 40%. Which basically means all you need to do is wait 2 turns, and then everyone on your demon team has a 40% increased damage dealt. That includes melee, who is getting a 15% basic stat boost from Demiurga and getting a 20% basic stat boost from Gelder. This man's absurd. Like, he's actually absurd. He's definitely built for PvP. Once again, I'll actually go over one of his cons right now that I think is actually quite a big problem. He is fully debuff based. His entire kit relies on having debuffs, apart from his ultimate, which is a Sever AoE ult, which isn't going to be doing much damage unless you got debuffs, because he won't have his relic procced, which is most of where damage comes from, as well as the increased damage dealt as well. And that's his problem, is that PvE wise, I don't see any use for him. I will of course be trying him in PvE, like, I feel like it's worth me giving him a try. I feel like it'd be quite unfair if I didn't give him a try in PvE. But once again, he will struggle with the fact that he isn't really meant for PvE, he's more meant for PvP, which I understand. Maybe, you know, farming whatever content that can have debuffs on them, enemies can have debuffs, he'll be very good for, because technically it's a priority skill, which means the AI is always going to pick it. Priority is basically a condition skill, so if you have a buff on you, the AI will, and let's say the AI is playing Blue Ludo and has a Rupture skill, it will play the Rupture skill because it meets the criteria of 2 times damage. Sort of like when you play a Chaos, whenever you're versing a bot, Chaos Arthur-Signs, they'll AoE and then immediately single target, because they will always prioritize the AoE skill because there's a debuff, and then will immediately single target because the single target has a criteria of dealing more damage when there's a debuff on the enemy. And then with the ultimate as well, which is kind of cool. But overall, he's a very good character. They definitely put a lot of thought into him. I feel like he was definitely designed to be a good breath of fresh air. Because normally collabs are all unknown based, and it's sort of like, it's kind of irritating. But, you know, they decided to make him an additional race of demon, which is also a huge step forward for collabs. Collabs who were just stuck with humans and unknowns. Now we have a demon who's going to make demons meta again. Until, of course, another collab comes out in 2 months' time, and then unknowns back to meta again, and then it probably gets wiped off the face of the planet by demons again, back in December, really, probably. And now we'll go and look at the other lovely lady. Here she is. Okay, here we go. So we're actually going to go into the... We'll go into the menu this time. Her passive is really confusing, so please, like, I'm sorry if I get anything wrong. Her passive is extremely specific, and I feel like there's a reason for that. I feel like they definitely had an idea with her in mind. So, we'll start with the passive. At the start of the battle, applies electrical wave to all enemies for 2 turns, and for every unknown ally participating in battle, increase the unknown ally's attack by 10%. Basically a 30% attack boost turn 1 for unknowns, which is pretty insane. Bear in mind, she also works in PvE, so if you have a full unknown team, that's a 40% increased damage dealt, sorry, increased attack, just straight up, which is absurd. Like, that's like that's more attack than what Nanashi with Relic would give you. And Boulder. Boulder gives you 30% basic stats, Nanashi gives you 30% basic stats, she gives you 40% attack turn 1, no criteria needed, just you have to be unknown. Also, when the unit uses an AoE skill, applies a shock debuff. This shock debuff, let me quickly give you a quick example of what the shock debuff is. It's just your standard shock debuff, nothing special. Just your standard shock, nothing different about it at all, it's the same thing. For 2 turns, and then increase the unknown ally's damage dealt by 20% when attacking an enemy with shock or electrical shock effect. This is the electrical shock effect. This is the shock effect, basically. They don't stack, I'm pretty sure. It's just because it says or, not and. So 20% increased damage dealt. Bear in mind, this is a grey debuff, basically meaning that it will work everywhere, every demonic beast, everything. So you can guarantee you give your unknown allies that damage dealt. And that's why I feel like she was probably designed for, you know, a little bit of PvE in mind, because that's kind of weird. Then what electrical shockwave is when attacked by an enemy skill, applies a level 3 shock for 2 turns. I don't know what that means. Like, it's really weird. Like, her skills, or her... I think it means damage-wise, but I don't know how they calculate that. Yeah, her passive's really odd. I'll have a deeper look at it when it comes to global, and of course we have complete 100% accurate English translations, because currently I'm reading a translation from the Japanese one. It's not the best. Her single target, which is... inflicts damage equal to 200%. Electrical explosion damage equal to 200% to a single target. For every shock or electrical shockwave applied on the enemy, increase attack-related stats by 25% when attacking. Basically, turn 1, if you AoE in a single target, that's the most amount of damage you're going to get with this skill. When this debuff disappears, which is after a few turns, after 2 turns, this initial debuff will disappear, and then you'll only be doing 25%. But for the first 2 turns, you'll be doing 50% boost, which isn't too bad. And once again, multiplier goes up, but the actual effect of the skill doesn't. Not too bad damage though. This is like on my JP account, which is horrible. She's got no outfits, no engraved gear. 400k is quite good, with only 1 unknown on the field. This is without her relic really being maxed out as well. And then her other skill is a Pierce AoE skill, which is what we've seen. This is basically the skill that you're going to be using to apply the shock. As you can see here, it applies shock every single time you use the skill. Here we go. And then of course level 3 does the same as well. And then her ultimate, which is actually very good. I feel like this is where you sort of understand what she was designed for. Applies a buff that increases allies' basic stats by 30% and inflicts power strike damage equal to 600% to 1 target. That's not only a lot of damage for a single target skill, but 30% basic stats for not only just her, your entire team, which is insane. She herself can provide your team, if she ults, and you have a 4-man unknown team, with 70% attack. Not including her relic, which for every shock or electrical shockwave effect applied on the enemies, increases allies' basic stats by 3% up to 12%. So she can give your unknown team, let's say not turn 1, because realistically you're not going to get in the ult turn 1 or turn 2. So, well, she could, technically, but I don't think it would be possible. With close to 80, nearly 90% attack, basically, which is a lot of attack. Especially for a collab character to be providing. See her ultimate now. And then, once again, her cons in PvP, she doesn't really have the highest crit chance. I'll quickly show you. She doesn't actually have the highest crit chance in comparison to, like, Demiurge, who's the highest, one of the highest. I think he is the highest crit chance character in the game if you own all his weapons. But 103% crit chance is bad for today's standard. She's got like okay crit defense, okay crit resistance. She has like good crit damage, and this is with attack crit gear on at the moment. Her pierce rate's good, her resistance is good. It's more that her problem is that she was definitely designed more PvE orientated. Once again, she has shock, so technically she can be used for I forgot the game mode's called now. For Rat, which I'll probably try floor 1 and 2 with her. Just for a video and for the sake that she has a shock debuff. And then also she has a power strike skill. She gives basic stats to unknowns. She increases the attack of unknowns. I feel like she will be very good for the new burden from what I've seen from lots of people on Twitter, lots of Japanese people or JP players are basically saying she is quite good for it because she provides you this 40% attack, which may not sound like a lot, but a 40% attack boost plus a power strike ult, which can give you another 30% basic stat boost, is quite good, especially when you get to final phase, where it's a lot less RNG on the final phase of Bird, of the floor 4 of Bird. That's why I think she's going to excel, and I feel like that's where they more designed her. I feel like she was more designed towards PvE content than PvP, which is okay, to be honest, because, you know, everyone's got to do PvE content. People are more likely to play PvE than PvP, because PvP can sometimes be quite boring, especially if let's say you don't have the high CC, your characters aren't really that invested. Yeah, overall, they're both very good characters. Of course, they both have their problems. Nebril isn't too good in PvP, Demiurge isn't too good in PvE, but once again, they're both very good at what they do. You know, 40% attack boost to unknowns in PvE is absurd. You know, Demiurge's 40% increased damage dealt to demons, technically obtainable turn 2, is absurd. I feel like that's a good thing. They both have their good uses. Now we're going to actually have a look at the banner itself. Of course, you've got the collaboration characters. There are 6 of them on this banner, which means when you get an SSR, there is a 57% chance when you get an SSR that is a collaboration character. Of course, most of that percent is these two. I'm pretty sure you have to add up all 4 of these old characters just to have a higher percent than one of these. Which is fine, because you kind of want the new ones. For dupes wise, you do want Demiurge 2/6, really, for his ultimate. If you don't care about his ultimate, doesn't really matter. Nebril, you can get a 1/6, is fine. Irons, if you want to, of course, invest in Irons, you want him at least 4/6 for his passive. Albedo, you can technically get away with 1/6, but of course the higher dupes the better. Same with Sholtir. Cocutus, we get it for free anyway, so it's not really too big of a problem. Nanoshi on the banner, which is kind of nice, because, well, he's on basically every banner, but he works quite well with this collab in general. Everyone here is unknown. He's even on the Demiurge team, even though he's demon. Green Sorrel, kind of useless. Red Tomio, always useful. Demon Cusac's okay. Of course, Green Chandler's okay. We've got 2 seasonals on the bottom. We got a Valence Ludo, which is, I guess, he's okay for the Chaos mode. That's really it. And of course, Gelder, who is on currently the best demon team for Mr. Demiurge. But apart from that, I'd recommend summoning. Like, this is a quite a good banner, and I'm going to be doing a rotation on it because I want to. Like, it's a very good banner. It's a collaboration once again, so there's exclusivity there. But they've definitely put some thought into these characters about what they want them to be. You know, Demiurge is designed definitely for PvP in mind, and of course, I've got a name. Nebril is of course fully designed for PvE, which is kind of nice because we don't really see a character who works everywhere, but is also excels quite well in PvE. And no SSRs, but that's completely fire. You know, I wish you guys good luck on summoning tomorrow, and I'll see you tomorrow in my summons. So goodbye.